Hello, everyone. In the next episode of the podcast, From Research to Reality of HPE Labs, I have a great honor and pleasure to host the coolest and the highest energy gentleman in the world, Chandrakant Patel.
Thank you, Dejan.
Chandrakant Patel, also known as former chief engineer of HPE Inc., former senior fellow HPE, most recent award winner of iTherm, IEEE fellow, many other fellows. We have honestly greatest honor and pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, Dejan.
Can you introduce yourself the way you would do if you were first time here?
Introductions can be had by just going to LinkedIn. So I thought a better way to introduce myself would be provide a few things that have guided me through my career. And I bin them into various categories. Oftentimes, having spent 42 years in Silicon Valley, people ask me, Chandrakant, any regrets? What made for a good career? And I always say, what made for a good career stems from asking yourself, what are 3 things that make you happy? So let's calibrate. The 3 things that make me happy are family and friends and values, number 1. Number 2, joys in small things. Sitting with you here is an immense joy. And life is good. Life is outstanding because one accumulates millions of these joys. The cumulative joys, very important. Third is fundamentals of engineering. Those are the 3 things that make me happy. Now, if people ask me, Chandrakant, any regrets? Because during my 42 years in Valley, there were many big IPOs, one of the biggest. I had an opportunity to go to a couple of them. So there was a lot of money involved. And I look back and I realize that I don't have the regrets because among the 3 things that make me happy, that's not one of them. And so I ask many young people, you need to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, what are the 3 things that make you happy? If one of them is money and yacht and a private jet, let's go for that and strive to get that. So that's my first thing that tells you a little bit about myself. The second is I have charted my career by looking at socio-economic, ecological trends and deciding what to work on next. Not only for myself, but also for my team and my organization.
The cool team.
The cool team. The cool team was initially the thermal team that did all the chip cooling work. But then the cool team, and I'm glad you brought that up, expanded to a team of 18,000 because the cool team model, which was the group across the company that worked on chip cooling, system cooling, we made 34 such groups in other areas as well, AI and so on, and I led that. Mm-hmm. So yes, when I look at the socioeconomic ecological trends, I would use that to guide my organization, the company, and my team. And that is very important. And then the last 2 bits that I always say is, what is your KPI in life? So for me, my KPI is net positive impact. You often call me Joules Patel. So I measure everything in joules, the unit of energy. So the amount of energy I expend, am I getting a return on that? Consider AI, for example. You're using tremendous amount of energy. Am I getting a return on that? So that's very important to me. Joules saved over joules used. So those are the things that guide me, the KPI, the strategy, and my personal values.
And by the way, the immense joy is mutual. Thank you.
I know that, Dejan. Even though, Dejan, you pick on me a lot, I look back on my career at HPE, and even now, look, I'm not there anymore, and we're still publishing papers together. What does that tell you? And you have me here. Yeah.
So now that we have you here,
right.
Finally, can you focus on the beginning of your career?
Right.
How did you start to get to all these KPIs and other things?
I think the beginning of the career must go back to the time when I was in India as a child. As a child in India, we had pen pals in the US, and we used to write letters. And I came to a conclusion that America was on top of the world because her children were tinkerers. They worked on their parents' cars. This was 60s. Mm-hmm. The kids worked on their parents' car. They mowed lawns, they distributed newspaper, saved money, and built radio control planes. In India, we couldn't even get to a glider as a model airplane. Mm-hmm. And they had classic book, Resnick and Halliday. the physics book. And we had an Eastern edition. So America was on top of the world because it was a land of tinkerers. When I came to Silicon Valley, I found myself in a valley of tinkerers. So my journey from the childhood has been shaped by these points of view, which I think were correct. And when I came to the US, I was 18 years old. I came with $20. I ended up in Oregon. I worked in a lumber mill. I had a near-death experience, which you do a search, Chandrakant Patel surviving, you'll see a chronicle story about that. I lived in the Skid Row in San Francisco, went to community college, and then to Berkeley. So my post-high school, everything was here. Unlike many Indians who come from IIT, in fact, the chronicle story says that not all Indian engineers come from IIT, and I'm one of them. I went to a community college, very proud of that. And I think community colleges are a backbone, and I spent a lot of time on that. And then teaching even post-community college. And then when I came to Silicon Valley, I have been guided by what I saw were the trends, and I pivoted from one subject to the other, which we can talk about later. And that's how my journey went. Having strong point of view, and then experiencing the hardships of paying for school yourself, living in the Skid Row, learning from all the people around me, and then entering Silicon Valley and shaping my career based on what I saw were the trends.
Strong point of view, but flexible approach is how you get there.
Yeah. Because without the flexibility, there's a point of view is a kind of like a statement.
Direction,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You spent decades in HP Labs, and we did some together. So how did Labs evolve? How did you evolve in Labs?
So, what I found amazing about Labs was when I was working on rotating systems, hard disk drives. Mm-hmm. There were, we were coating the disk with gamma Fe2O3, making heads to record bits on the disk. Those were the first hard drives. I worked at Memorex Corporation. A 1 gigabyte hard drive sold for $50,000 to $100,000 back then. It was the size of a washing machine, had a 100 kilogram mass. I saw the trend that the drives were becoming smaller. The stiffness to mass ratio was going up. Natural frequency was going up. So I came to a conclusion that as the drives become smaller, the challenge of mechanical engineer of making them robust will be gone. I better get out of this business. So when I came to Labs, it was a pivot into an area that I had no idea about. They had advertised a position for, we are going to do a chip, an HP chip. We need to figure out how to put a chip down, make a multi-chip module, get the signals out at speed. We need to cool it. I'd never even seen silicon. But what I liked about Labs is they saw that I didn't have the experience, but I had the fundamentals. And I would be able to execute because I have strong fundamentals, and I got the opportunity. And when I came to Labs, I was surrounded by people like Len Cutler, who had created the atomic clock, John Moll, of Eber's Moll theory. Mm-hmm. So Labs had these giants. And what I also found was these giants who were very happy to share their knowledge. That was then, and I still think that is now. So one thing that has remained constant, rather than tell you what has changed, is the HP way. And we can talk more about it, given my interactions with Bill Hewlett. We'll get into that, I hope.
Yeah, and HP way probably stayed most in Labs because of the people.
Exactly.
You told us a little bit how you started in Labs, but tell us a little bit more. What were your roles and responsibilities? Over the lunch, you were talking about magic numbers, 59, 60, 62, 63, 64. I remember all these numbers. What were your specific roles?
So, before HP had these levels, the technical career path levels, HP had these numbers. Everybody was member of technical staff, and there were 60, 62, and those were your grades. Yeah. So when I started, I came from, like I said, in the hard drive business, I had risen up. But when I came to Labs, I went into a new field, which I had no experience in. So I reset myself back to entry level. So I started at entry level in 1991. Mm-hmm. And then those levels subsequently changed after the merger with Compaq. It went from specialist, intermediate specialist, expert, principal, distinguished fellow, senior fellow. Yeah. So the first level I had was an entry level, complete reset after 8 years. Mm-hmm. And then the growth occurred. What is most interesting, Dejan, is the growth occurred. I never in my life went to my manager and said, make me
this or that.
This or that. Yeah. It happened. And
for a good reason.
I delivered, the outcomes came along.
yeah.
And so I feel like there were 4 key things that made it happen. If you look at the TCP criteria, the 4 areas are business impact, technical depth and breadth, leadership and influence, and recognitions, internal and external. Those are the 4 areas of the TCP.
And in that order also, probably.
It is in that order. Sometimes the order change, but it is in that order.
Yeah.
Business impact is most important.
Yeah.
So that's how and it's still true today.
Yeah, it's still true. All of those.
Yeah.
But it's not only about the work. What are your most memorable moments? Work, not work, in general?
They're all work. Life is, we spend all the time at work. If your work is miserable, you have a miserable life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I care. I mean, look at it. I take the bus to go to Palo Alto. By the time I come home, I've spent 10 hours. So the most memorable times, and I hope my family doesn't hear me. This podcast, they may not be very happy.
We'll cut out this part.
We'll cut out that part. Was at Labs, man. It was just the greatest, fondest memory of the work from 1991 to and then even after the split, staying with HPI, chief engineer, was, I should say, rather than say Labs, it was the time at HP, all the things we did, millions of joys in small things. That was what it was.
What I really meant is not outside of the work, but even at work, it's working and people.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant.
And in that context, working and people, I found 3 things. The people I worked with, Cullen and my team, immediate team, selfless collaboration. I became a senior fellow because of them.
Yep.
So number 1 was selfless collaboration. Second was this camaraderie, right? We all flew together, played together. And third was learn by doing. We built it, showed the outcomes. So those were the 3 things that made it fun.
And the following is not a loaded question, but you've seen things change. Mm-hmm. There were fewer labs around the world. If you remember, there were AT&T labs, which are famous, gone. Microsoft labs here were closed in Silicon Valley. How did you perceive, and we split, so how did you perceive evolution of HP Labs before, after split?
So, we have to be practical. Like you said, all those industrial research labs are gone. You can't just say HPE Labs has reduced. Other labs are gone. So industrial research lab changed. And it changed because the business changed. We as a nation went up higher above the food chain. We used to do everything. We as the industry, we did everything. There was silicon in Silicon Valley, Dejan. Yeah. There were fabs in Silicon Valley. So when you go from a place where there were fabs to no fabs, things have changed. So naturally, if there were fabs, there'd be research related to manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. So over time, the business models change. Like I said, when I joined, I was in Silicon Valley, Valley of Tinkerers. Now we are a valley of abstraction. So in a valley of abstraction, we are sitting above the internet layer, creating innovations. Deep down, lots of physical innovation requires lab, like Lucent, AT&T Bell Labs, HP Labs, and so on. So what has changed is now the innovation is occurring above the abstraction. But I contend that it needs to go below the abstraction layer because we have entered the cyber-physical age. We can talk more about that later.
Yeah. So you mentioned when you came to the labs, you were entry level. But then at some point, you were acting director of all of the labs.
Yeah.
How did you enjoy that role?
It's interesting. Cullen and I had coffee together and we were just talking about that. And I was a senior fellow. Meg reached out to me and asked me to run as an interim director, reporting to her. I loved it because the time I was there, I was very clear what I was going to do. I said, we'll look at the research threads that are underway, and I'm an interim, so I'm just going to drive them through to value. Mm-hmm. So there was one, if you remember, MetaBox, which was a database for metadata.
Amazing product.
I worked with the Brazil team. Mm-hmm. We worked with Alistair and all the people who were working on it, and we drove it to value. It became a database for metadata, Express Query. Mm-hmm. Similarly, there was print work going on print rollers for Indigo. So I divided all the projects that were going on that I could execute in the 1 year, and I focused on that. And what was fun was, in order to focus on that, we needed to go beyond the labs to create a virtual team because we need hands-on people to build the solution. So I'm very good at that. At least I believe that was one of the elements I talked about. So I was able to pull people who were not even part of our organization to contribute and build the solution. That made it fun. The administrative part, not so much, but the execution of the solution using the virtual team, a lot. I enjoyed it. And that led me to this new position that Meg and Tracy and Bill Vecti kind of gave me, which was this chief engineer.
Nice. Congratulations for all of that. Still, after all these years, it's remarkable. One way we would make progress or change the direction or rethink what we were doing was at offsites.
Yeah.
I remember we've done many. You and I have done at least 3 in a few months, if not a few weeks.
Yeah.
How do you perceive them? Do you still remember them? Were they effective? Do you still smell kerosene?
So, Dejan, there were 2 offsites I remember with you on. One, Cullen and I were teaching a course in France, and I had come back. He stayed in France and enjoyed himself. I had to come back because you and I were running that offsite. Do you remember we had solutions that we were proposing, which was a data center in a container?
In the truck.
In a container, and including one that could be shipped on a plane.
Yeah.
And this was 1990, 2000, early 2000.
Early 2000.
Early 2000. So those were strategy workshop, including one at the Hyatt at the airport. Yeah. Those strategy workshop were very good in the sense we kind of looked at the trends and said what we want to work on. So I divided the workshop into maybe 2 key areas, strategy workshop. And then there was another kind of workshop that we used to do, which I liked, which was we would go in the field. So when we were as a team, we were working on energy and sustainability. We were looking at using available energy in waste streams. Mm-hmm. So we ended up going to the wastewater treatment plant in Union City, Fremont, where 30 million liters of waste come from all the cities. And we looked at how the waste is treated. And we wanted to see if it can be converted. The methane can be used to generate electricity. And we found that it wouldn't be such a good idea because that methane would not be very clean because people throw all kinds of stuff in the medicine and so on, and it would harm the generator that would go methane to electricity. So that was a great learning experience. Same type of workshop, those were like workshop in the field workshop. We also went to a dairy farm where we looked at manure from dairy cows. We suggested that 2,000 dairy cows could run a 1 megawatt data center. And we saw this dairy farm where manure was being converted to methane to electricity. And we saw that the output was amazing. I think it was even better than Palo Alto Utility because there are no glitches because the gas is always there. Yeah. And the cows will produce the manure, 55 kilograms of manure per day from a dairy cow. We know our stuff when it comes to this.
So how many cows for 1 gigawatt data center? That's the most recent size for AI.
So, American dairy farms can have as many as 50,000. So 2,000 per megawatt, so 2,000 times 1,000.
So it's over-designed.
2 million. Yeah. But I think that it's not important. I think that these large-scale data centers, this is a separate conversation. The gigawatt-scale data center is one way to go. But I think the opportunity are containerized pods for sovereign AI. I'd love to have that conversation.
Distributed.
Yes.
Sovereignty especially.
Yeah.
Going back to titles, even though you don't care about the titles, but I observed when you were senior fellow, there were 8 senior fellows. Now we barely have 1 here in HPE Labs, maybe proportional to the size. Yeah. Or is that consequence of something or some other thing?
I think it's proportional to size because I was on the TCP board and it was always a question of, given the size of the company, what is a good number to have? Mm-hmm. But it's also business outcomes, right? And a greater need for the business impact. We named the 4 criteria.
Yeah.
And so the business impact is become very critical. So maybe that's driving it, but certainly size. We were a huge company. We split, right?
Yeah, multiple times.
Test and measurement. Then we split again in 2012, and then so on and so forth.
Medical and others.
Yeah.
One of the philosophies, and you mentioned in the very beginning, which I was very pleased about HP Way, but one of the philosophies of Bill and Dave is this profound care for people. Yeah. They took us to these in Big Basin and we used to cook for employees. So can you elaborate on that? Is this still in place in Silicon Valley or?
I don't think it's in place in Silicon Valley, but it is in place at HP because it's hard to shake off such a culture by such founders. Mm-hmm. I have to tell you a Bill story. I met Bill Hewlett in the lab stock. So one day I went to the lab stock. So my office was across from him in Building 3 Upper. Back then, that was the Computer Systems Research Lab.
I remember where it was.
You were just like we used to talk over the partitions, right? And you were in that corner, I was in this corner. But I ran into Bill in the lab stock. And he was looking, and I helped him find soldering wire and screws. He was a tinkerer. He was from the time when Silicon Valley was a valley of tinkerers. Yeah. So my natural reaction to Bill was, Bill, would you mind coming to my lab one day? And he did. And we spent a whole afternoon together. And let me tell you what he did. The first thing he did was, Chandrakant, show me your lab notebook. And then he went through, what is it you're doing? Why are you doing it? What is the state of the art? We wanted to spray cool the chip. So he says, well, IBM has thermal conduction module. What is the state of the art? Why doesn't the state of the art work? And how are you advancing the state of the art? And then I was demoing the solutions. So I answered all those questions. I demonstrated the lab bench, what we were doing. He wanted to know about uncertainty analysis. Look at this, fundamentals. So if you look at the values of HP, I sum it up into 5 words. Fundamentals, simplicity, humility, magnanimity, and inclusivity. Nice. I think those 5 are still alive. We can argue about at what level, what magnitude. I don't think it is alive across the board in Silicon Valley.
But now you are semi-retired. Have you stopped tinkering?
No. So it's interesting. When I retired, I take the bus almost every day, literally. So I had a litmus test. Monday morning, when I get on the bus, I ask myself, am I happier than Friday night? Why ask at that time? Because, we have an 18th century bus system. So the buses don't run on time. That's the time to ask. And I was still happier than Friday. So I was not ready to retire. But at that time, I turned 65. I had 4 grandkids. So I posed it to our kids. And my kids said, write a proposal. Remember the time when we had to write proposals? If I had to suffer with proposals at work, I made that a modus operandi at home. So kids had to write proposal when they wanted to buy a Wii or a game. So they turned around and said, Dad, you'll drive mom nuts. What is your proposal? What would you do? So I wrote a proposal centered around tinkering. And the Patel advisory board, comprised of the family, approved it. And I'm kid you not, that's exactly what happened. And the advisory board approved it. And now I am Chandrakant as a service, offering my Chandrakant consultancy services. Mission, learn, teach, guide, solve. Because you always learn. You can't say that I learned 42 years of material, I'm going to use it. That doesn't work. You have to be on top every day. So learn, teach, guide, solve. Modus operandi, first principles. Revenue target, none. 0 revenue target.
And I'm glad that you brought up this, because in the past, you said you were never driven by money. You clearly articulated what your priorities, etc. But for these priorities, how did you measure your success before and now?
So I think there is still an amount of money which makes you comfortable. So for me, making sure that my kids could go to college and they never have to get a loan, and we could fully support our kids through college and even to get them settled. And that's the amount I want and still be comfortable. And after I take the bus and I've got a car, and those things are not important. So that was a priority. So you can't just say money was not a priority. There was a level of money that was there. Yeah. But the greatest priority was seeing the outcome of what you do. And it goes back to my KPI. So I look back at the work we did, the data center work we did, way ahead of its time, right? And we brainstormed on that. We worked. We are still writing papers based on the content. Dejan, you, me, Cullen, all of us are writing papers based on the content. So that, to me, the outcomes we got out of that, which was the net positive impact. So take an example, the data center we built with a controller developed, I would have to say, amazing control system developed by Cullen, multi-input, multi-output control system using a neural network long before AI was a big thing. That, when we turned it on, saved enough electricity in Bangalore to get a payback of 2 months. 2 months from a data center state of the art to data center with our controller that provisions the cooling resources based on the need using this AI algorithm and MIMO. And you see that, you turn it on and you see it, and the customer sees and they buy it. That's the outcome that makes me happy. It is like, show me. And we demonstrated, showed, and sold. It's not show me, but you also have to sell it.
Now that you explain all your technical achievements and with all your titles, awards, and all of that, what are you most proud of in your life?
I think the most proud, I would have to say is, while I was at HPE, HPE also gave me the opportunity to do something on my own. So I was an adjunct faculty. So Cullen and I taught at San Jose State, Santa Clara. We taught graduate and undergraduate courses in thermal management. That was great. But my greatest satisfaction was I taught for 16 years at Chabot College in Hayward. I taught CAD on the drafting table. I taught initially on the drafting table how to do mechanical drawing. Then I taught CAD and some CA, computer-aided engineering. I placed about 500 students in Silicon Valley jobs. These were people from my community who probably would not have got a job at all because they didn't know what to do. In fact, they would come and say, Mr. Patel, I don't know what to do. My parents don't know how to guide me. They would literally say that. And the counselor would say, go take general ed courses, and then you could decide later. I would say, no, focus, execute. And those 500 placements in 16 years, I'm most proud of. I even placed one of my students at Google, which would go on to become back in 2004. So, I'm very proud of the successes of my students who otherwise did not have a chance. For me, the passion is we must create a pipeline in our community so that they could share the economic joys of Silicon Valley, the growth of Silicon. I think we have not done that, and we see the misery on our streets, including in Palo Alto. When I see the homeless, it brings tears to my eyes. Yeah. Those who do not have a home, the unhomed. We should be training and hiring in the communities we serve, and the community colleges are an opportunity. That's what I've always been keen on, and that was the small thing I did was satisfying. So now I tell those students, I touched 500 students, I want them to touch 5,000. Because in my time, there was no internet. Now they have Facebook and this and that. I said, you have tools to scale. So they often come to me and said, Mr. Patel, thank you for helping us. What can we do for you? I said, I don't want anything. I want you to help an order of magnitude more people than I did. That's the only way to make a difference.
Pay forward.
Pay forward. Yeah. Absolutely pay forward.
Very noble. Mr. Patel, most recently you were awarded IEEE Richard Chu Memorial Lifetime Achievement Award. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what does it mean? Why did you receive it?
So the Richard Chu was an IBM researcher who did hybrid cooling and the thermal conduction module, which was sort of the standard at a time when IBM had the MCMs for their supercomputers, and he created the cooling system. So in his honor, IEEE created this Lifetime Achievement Award. And that award is not an award for myself, but rather my team, I think. Because if I look back, the achievements the outcomes was the award. What was the outcome? Is we foresaw the heat dissipation from chips. As back, we created a roadmap, those strategy workshops. Yeah. We created a roadmap of what we will see in the future in terms of heat dissipation from chips. At a time when the chips were only 10 watts, and now they are 100 watts, and some modules will get to a kilowatt, 1,000 watts. So we saw the heat dissipation coming, and we created a portfolio of solutions. And true to our principles, we built a demonstrator, a test bed, and showed that they will work. And we put that in our portfolio. We used it in HP Superdome. We used it in HP servers. So we got business impact out of it. We innovated. And there is still several in our portfolio that can be used today with like the NVIDIA chips, the spray cooling with inkjet heads as an example. That's one that's still in the portfolio that could be exploited. So it's the portfolio of solutions we thought of, not I, but we, Kalan, myself, Monam, Ratnesh, that was the team, Ameep, that was the team. There's a handful of people.
So it's always about the team.
It is always about, I'm sure there are a lot of people who have individual success. I haven't come across one yet.
Yeah, very true. You also happen to be the member of National Academy of Engineering, you're IEEE fellow, maybe some other fellows, I don't know. Tell us about what does it mean, why it is important for you? Why is it important for other young generations to strive towards that?
So, I didn't know a lot about NAE, but I had heard that in universities, it's very important for tenure track. And university faculty are always big on they want to be in the National Academy. The National Academy probably has about 2,600 members, and they choose about 60 every year. It's important to be forget about me. You are much more active than I am in IEEE. You go out of your way to serve the community. So the reason you want to be a member is not necessarily the accolades of, I'm an NAE member, it's a very select group, but rather to make a difference. So like you make a difference in IEEE. The job of an engineer is not only to do business impact and technical contribution, but also service to profession. So if I'm an ASME fellow, mechanical engineer, then I need to do service to that mechanical engineering profession. I'm an IEEE electrical engineering profession. NAE, I should be doing service to the entire engineering profession. I should opine. So I also opine at NAE in a big way. Recently, I wrote an article that the systemic underinvestment in physical sciences has left America ill-prepared for the cyber-physical age. Very strong opinion suggesting that we are not investing as a nation on physical as much, and that we are ill-prepared for the cyber-physical age. So it's very important to opine as well. You got the bully pulpit, and then once you opine, you have to show the way to get the answer. So this is the reason young people should join. They should not join so that they can go on LinkedIn and said, I'm very proud to be an IEEE fellow. That's good. They should be proud of that. But besides that, they should also think of how they can service the community and the profession.
So not just recognition, but responsibility. It's
Exactly.
just the beginning.
Yeah, and recognition is good. If I want people to feel good. So recognize and be happy about it, but just don't stop there.
Yeah. I know that we covered already these questions, but there's nuances. What was most gratifying for you in your career?
I think the most gratifying for me, I'll say two things. One is at home, taking what I did at work and even bringing my children to work, be influenced by HPE. So one picture I'd never forget is a half-day Christmas. We used to have that half-day, families would come. Bill and Dave standing tall, Bill standing next to him at their doorway, and the Christmas choir performing. And my little son was holding my hand. It brings tears to my eyes when I see that. That is indelible image in my mind. That is what HPE is. It's a family, and my kids were influenced by HPE. My older son, my daughter, they're all engineers, and they were influenced by HPE. And they were influenced by what I learned, because whatever I learned at work, I would apply them at home. For example, at work, my team, we would always have to start at the whiteboard. Everything would be whiteboarded out, including what we're going to do. So at home, I kept a whiteboard in the family room. My daughter went to interview at Tesla. She says, Dad, I got an interview at Tesla. So I said, okay, go to the whiteboard, sketch out a car, and show me how you would size the motor in the car. Calculate the rolling friction, calculate the wind resistance. And I kind of made her go through all the physical systems and data, and then someday you'll use AI to autopilot. This is 2014. So that comes from being at work and taking what I knew at work home. The kids didn't like that too much. They used to call it whiteboarding, or at that time, waterboarding was big, and that was their way of saying that it was torture at the Patel household. But you see, I think mixing work and home, and having the home life be influenced by work, and those kinds of images that I just described to you, Bill and Dave, I think those are the most memorable things. Besides the projects, I've already said that execution of project with my team was most gratifying. Yeah. The other thing was this.
I think I already know the answer to the next question, given what you told me, but I'll ask anyways. If you were to start again today, what would you do differently?
I think, so one thing is, I teach a career strategy workshop or a course called Creating a Visual CV. It's a little bit of a hindsight. I did the actions based on thinking, but never created a drawing for it, right? Later in life at HPE, at the behest of some colleagues, I created a course called Creating a Visual CV, where you visually represent your values, your depth and your breadth courses, and how do you decide to go from industry to industry. It's a strategy on, given your values and what makes you happy, what ought to be the course ahead. It's a very popular course. I would do that visual CV on day one.
Day zero.
What was that?
Day zero.
Day zero. My older son, who was not, I said, come on, Dad, that's hindsight. The first thing he did, he's a cardiothoracic surgeon. He said, Dad, I want you to create my visual CV. Because whereas we didn't draw it out, he went into master's and bachelor's in bioengineering, then did tissue engineering, then MD, then general surgery. And now he's a cardiac surgeon with heart and lung transplant. So 22-year journey. I always insisted that he should have graphed it out. He never did. It was all in the mind. But now he has commissioned me to do the blueprint. I request all the youngsters who are listening to this, make your blueprint on day one. Now, it's not important to stick to the blueprint. You can always change the blueprint.
Yeah, it's direction.
It's not like the old days where you take an eraser out, right? Now you can go softly change it. But make it visual. Because of visual abstraction, you will remember. 3 pages of word, you wouldn't, right? So make a visual, iconic representation of the course ahead. And if they need help, just call on me. I will help them.
I can already imagine your own with all these pictures drawn by hand. How does your work impact the broader good?
I think there's 2 areas, right? One is the work related to data centers that we did early. And now the data center is a very broad area. Everybody knows what a data center is. Back in the day when we started data center in 1998. Not only that, Dejan, I remember going to a conference and saying that data center will be, the building will be the computer, industry standard components will be in there. And that, remember Rich Friedrich and all of us were talking that service-centric computing. And I said, energy must be managed and as a key resource. And people said, Chandrakant, nobody ever gets fired for wasting energy. You would get fired if a server shut down. But look how it has changed.
Things changed.
So I think that our early work in data center has not been exploited. And I'll say third time, not been exploited. What we are doing in data center is gross over-provisioning based on rules of thumb. It is high time that the world looked at HPE research that was done between 1998 to 2015 and even today. Because I've not been part of HPE. You guys are...
That's the day when I started, 1998.
1998. And even we publish papers today.
Recently.
It is high time that the world turned to HPE, looked at our work, and use it. It's not like we are holding it back. We have shared it in our document. Yep. Let's use fundamentals to build data center. The amount of consumption of energy of these AI data centers is untenable. So the one good thing we can do is use the data center work of HPE to make for a better, least lifetime energy data center. And then the second thing for me is I want to train and hire from the communities I live in. So let's turn our attention to community college. In a world where there is AI, right? People keep thinking about, jobs will be lost. Have you ever thought of, the new Bachelor of Science is an Associate of Science. 2 years. What do you learn in Bachelor of Science, right? You learn fundamentals and you learn tools. With AI, the tools have become generative. Yep. So if you don't have to teach tools, you still should teach the fundamentals. You should always teach the fundamentals. Then now a community college can create workers with fundamental knowledge who can use AI. So we should look at AI as a job creator for the people who were left out of the cyber age for the last 20 years. We left our people out of the cyber age. It's time to bring them in. So I think that's the second big thing is look at what we have done and use what we have done, our template, to include people from the communities we serve. Look at what Bill and Dave did. They built divisions all around the country. McMillville, Oregon, Greeley, Colorado, they hired locally and they created a local pipeline. Let's take the template out of old HPE and execute it.
Great advices. You are riding buses, and I'm sure you occasionally still ride the bus, and you had opportunity to read a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for a good book?
So, the book I read at the behest of my then boss, late Al Barber, was Into Thin Air. So Al Barber had gone up to base camp And he had landed at Lukla when it was a gravel airfield. And he told the stories of how the base camp and the camps that come along the way. And I had only imagined it. Then John Krakauer wrote this book called Into Thin Air. I think that has been my all-time favorite book. I asked my son to read it, and he would go on to, when he was in India to do surgeries, he went to base camp, and he could recollect all those sites. So I think the reason I like that book is it talks about the systematic approach to reach to the summit. And if you don't follow the systematic approach, bad things can happen. So the reason we often fail is we lack the systematic approach. So systematic execution, fundamentally based, is very important. And that's what the book is trying to show. So for youngsters, I suggest they read the book, particularly now, because it's in the Valley, it's very become haphazard because you can get information anytime. People don't tend to be as systematic, which is a subject of another conversation. But systematic is the way to go.
And what do you do in your spare time when you are not teaching, writing visual CVs, reading books?
I walk a lot. I'm a walker. And I go to Don Edwards Regional Reserve, and I sit on the bench that you can oversee highway. You can see San Francisco about 30 miles away on a clear day. So I take in the beauty of San Francisco, the AQI of about 10, air that feels like oxygen being breathed in. I said, what a beautiful place we live in.
Beautiful.
So I just go in and suck the air with with AQI that is probably world scale low, right by the bay. And I watch those planes come in. And I imagine the plane, whether it's intersected with the glide slope. I look at it and I look at the glide slope trajectory, and I enjoy it. Joys in small things.
Very nice. Beautiful. I can imagine you there. And the last question, where you grew up in India or later on and now, what is the difference?
I think the greatest difference between growing up in India back then, no television. Once in a while we saw the movies. So our imagination grew by reading books. We read. On a summer day, there was one author, Alistair MacLean. He wrote many, and he was an author who used bombastic words to describe, and we were all big on wanting to use big English words. So,
That's where your marketing is coming from.
That's where the marketing is coming from. So he would describe a racetrack as even above the cacophonous clamor of engines under maximum revolution, the crescendo of the crowd was clearly audible. A lot of alliterations, and we loved that. And we wanted to look cool by using those big words. So that was first. People don't, one of the things I teach everyone I know is to become an extemporaneous speaker. And the word extemporaneous came from my 7th grade training in India. And when I talk to people here, a lot of the people, today's generation, they don't know what extemporaneous is. And the first thing I tell them is you must learn that. So extempore being not to unscripted, have a conversation. Like this, we are having is totally extempore. So I like to do extemporaneous speaking. Even if I'm speaking to 3,000 people, I don't script. I don't read off the thing. I speak my mind. I kind of frame the thoughts and talk about it. So what is different is back then it was fundamentals, learning about these various techniques, and making our imagination grow by listening, reading articles by our pen pals. Today, that has gone away. I hope it does not go away fully because that's a huge advantage. I believe I'm a senior fellow because of that. When we listen to cricket, in the cricket, back then there was a commentary on the transistor, the radio we would listen, and the commentator would describe the Melbourne cricket grounds, MCG, or the Basin Reserve in New Zealand, or Lords in England, or Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai, and he would say he'll describe the dew on the ground, and we would imagine from the words from the commentator, we would imagine what the world looks like. What does Melbourne look like? The sky, if you look out of the stadium, he says, you can see the skyline, the skyscraper. We would imagine all that. And I think that helped us a lot. We became good leaders in a world that was screen-free. That's the word. Yeah. So in the screen-free age, that was what made us grow. That's very different today. Everybody has a screen.
Chandra, thank you for coming. You haven't lost a bit from these early days, the energy, passion, audacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Chandrakant, congratulations for receiving the Richard Chu Award for Excellence in Thermal and Thermomechanical Management of Electronics. It's really just a fantastic acknowledgement of a career that that has made an impact on a broad industry, the broad IT industry, but also so many engineers that have come up and stood on your shoulders. If I think back to your, kind of throughout your career, it's really been in large part about teaching and helping others find their path, and we're all incredibly grateful for you in helping us do that. You've taught me three sort of main things. One is to focus on the fundamentals. If you focus on the fundamentals, it'll build a foundation upon which other things can grow and thrive. Strive to be T-shaped, another one of your mantras, because if you're T-shaped, you can have an expertise in one area, but then be broad and be able to have a larger impact that way. And then probably your greatest teaching is to teach us how to share our knowledge, as you've done by example throughout your entire career. So thank you for being an inspiration, and then for always Chandrakant leading the way.
I have known Chandrakant for over 20 years now. Ever since I was a graduate student, Chandrakant has been a major presence in my life, personally and professionally. It has been a privilege to observe such a brilliant mind at work. I have been able to see a Silicon Valley technologist as he paints the vision for the future. I have followed a beloved leader as he has led his team through multiple inflection points. I've heard a passionate educator mold future generations for the betterment of society. Chandrakant has showcased all of these, but he's also shown me what it means to be a loving husband, father, son, and now a grandfather. More than 2 decades later, he continues to be a friend and mentor, someone whom I look up to and lean upon for advice, support, and great stories. Chandrakant, congratulations on this very well-deserved award. I'm grateful for the day that our paths crossed. You're a role model for me and for so many others, and I truly believe that my life is better because of you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Hello, Chandrakant. It was great working with you at HPE Labs. Our net zero energy data center project was decades ahead of its time. You had the vision, then assembled a talented and multidisciplinary team to prototype it. It remains one of the highlights of my career. Thanks for letting me be part of your journey.
Hi, Chandrakant. Thank you very much for this opportunity. You have really been a vision in my career since I joined HPE back in fresh out of grad school. You really focused me in the right direction, and I could see based on how you did, my career has grown, and I have learned a lot of new things from you. And aside from your the work, I remember the days when we used to take the Dumbarton Express back home. The discussions we had on the bus, the ideas which you used to talk to me about, I think they really helped me into building who I am today. And of course, in terms of the technical side of things, the thermal, the energy, and all the other things, has really helped me build myself. Finally, when I left HPE, I left with those ideas, and they have since grown and made me what I am today. So thank you, Chandrakant, for all the good things you have done for me. And you really deserve the award and many more of this kind. Thank you.